if you go back to, Target and some of those, and Office Depot and some of those early hacks, what kind of solutions are you recommending to your clients in the current regulatory environment?
Do you want to pick it up, Mark? Or?
I think that very much depends on the client and the breach and the business that they're in and what the nature of the breach is, to be honest, Jay, because I don't think there's certainly not one answer that covers all there. But I think I just hark back to the previous question, is that if we do have a client that comes to us, and we do have clients that come to us because they've had the knock on the door from the regulator, or they fear they're going to get a knock on the door from the regulator, the advice we give is let's do something. Let's help you do something that enables you to show tangible improvement in the shortest amount of time. So that's, I guess, what I said to the last question, but I think it's true to answering your question too. And often that is not wholesale, complete upheaval of operational processes and platforms. It's let's just define a new way of doing something that closes the loophole here or cuts that avenue off there, and that's best done through redefining process and procedure and policy at that top level. So we the revolution takes time, but so our advice is always to try and do something that provides the most impact in the shortest amount of time, really.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry to make you repeat the answer, but I think it bears repetition for people to listen to that. Being the ostrich and putting your head in the sand is not going to work. No. But then there's the whole other extreme that it's not going to turn their world upside down. So I think when you, to your point, talk about doing things that are measurable and tangible and are going to show that you're being responsive and you want to move the issue, move the solution forward, I think that's wonderful advice.
I actually think as well, when you look at with policies and procedures specifically here, when you look at all of the current issues, with data privacy, with cybersecurity, with sexual harassment, every single time you look at that, it's all about controls, mechanisms, policies, procedures. And I also think that when you talk about head in the sand, Jay, a lot of people, this is where the scrutiny comes in, because they try to fall back on, we have policies and procedures. And actually, rather than going in their favor, it goes against them, because it actually identifies the issues with those controls, because they're just doing a tick box exercise. And again, this is where where technology can help, which is saying, I can clearly demonstrate to you that we have policies and procedures, but we are getting that information, which is critical on how our employees should behave, out to them, ensuring that they've read it, ensuring that they understand it, ensuring that there's any knowledge gaps are answered, and so on. So going back to Mark's point, this is now saying, hey, we've got policies and procedures, but we're utilizing them in the way that makes a difference, that is tangible.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the follow-on from that is you're absolutely right. Policies and procedures just existing is not enough. They actually have to relate to the regulatory pressure that you're trying to solve by publishing them in the first place or creating them in the first place. So evidence of not just having policies and procedures, but evidence that they have been regularly reviewed and that have been re-examined when regulation changes or obligations on a business change is as important as having them in the first place, if not more so. So it's that end-to-end piece of, yes, I've got them in place. Yes, I've ensured my employees have the right policies that relate to them, and also I've made sure through best endeavours and best efforts that they accurately reflect the regulatory pressure I'm currently under.
I think another point that people need to keep in mind is when you've done this is just a snapshot, right? This is where we are as a business right now, but it's a static point, and you can't say, oh, well, I loaded everything up. It's all there. I'm good for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
This is something that's, a living, breathing entity, and every day you need to be vigilant. And sometimes there's going to be activity out in the marketplace that's going to make you, change your procedures and protocols to meet that. And you just have to be on guard at all time, I think is, the point I'd want to add on top of what you guys are saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally agree.
I think we've pretty much answered question 7 through this conversation, but one of the things I wanted to add into there when we're talking about what the companies need to do more of to ensure that policies and procedures are consistently managed, reviewed, accessed, and relevant, and so on. And I think so. I always go back to a conversation we had recently with Hui Chen, and we were talking about your policies and procedures have got to be there for a reason, and you've got to make sure that they're written and delivered in a way which considers the objective of them. And the example she's always given was, policies and procedures in anti-bribery are not designed. The objective is not to make the employee an anti-bribery expert. It is intended to help them understand how they should be working within the laws and what's ethical and so on. So I feel like there's a big shift more on the ethics side of things, but a real big shift at looking at what the policies and procedures intention is for. And also then when it comes to the effectiveness of those policies, when you start to look at the objective, the effectiveness is, is there a reduction in the amount of incidents on FCPA within our organization based on the changes we made to our policy? It's a behavioral metric you can use to help effectiveness. So that was always something that comes to me in terms of how organizations can do things better.
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've seen that countless times in the past with some of our clients, where the most effective programs when it relates to policy and procedures are ones where the policies and procedures are not just restating regulation verbatim. They are properly interpreting how that regulation relates to the business, the operational side of the business, and then articulates, what needs to change or what behavior is required for employees to remain compliant. So yeah, I totally agree with that point, Jason. And we've seen both flavors, haven't we? Where that's done particularly well and where that hasn't.
Yep, absolutely. Jay, anything to add?
No, I think you guys covered it. We're going into the home stretch, so let me ask one question now. So number 8, how can proactive evaluations help forward-thinking companies identify potential weaknesses or risks in their ethics and compliance program?
So, okay, to me, the last 3 questions relate to each other. This is all about, how you can improve things. So, to answer your question, you have to take a skeptical view of things. I always think so. Complacency is your biggest enemy here. So. You may think you have completely understood a piece of regulation, completely interpreted it correctly as far as your business is concerned, articulated policies and procedures that ensure employee compliance to your staff, and then sit back and do nothing and assume everything's right. And just goes back to your earlier point about you having to have a mindset which is, constantly trying to look at improving what you have, because there will always be things you can improve on. There will always be holes to plug. Most businesses are dynamic and constantly changing anyway, so what may have been relevant and applicable today may not be the same next week. So that mindset of always trying to probe and to question and to find faults and to find holes is absolutely essential if you really want to stay on top of this.
Yeah, and I would say as well, when we've already identified right at the beginning, and we're kind of circling back again now that, you certainly don't want to be reactive. It's been proven with fines and penalties that, you're on the back foot if you've got a reactive approach, and you're going to look at how do you get better because, something's been identified. So, you definitely want to be on the proactive side. And I think, things like proactive, risk assessments and so on, you've got to understand the playing field that you're in. Where are we now? What risks present themselves, and how do we mitigate them with our compliance function? I think it's in many ways it's just a given. And I think to the point I was kind of, I think it was question 3 earlier, and something I know will be dear to Jay's heart here, that,